There's an item in Deadlock that, against one specific team lineup, is entirely useless. It literally won't do anything. It's probably the biggest waste of souls you can spend. On the flip side, there's a few heroes in this game that are absolutely shut out by this item. It's such an insane counter that it's hard to believe it's so cheap. Figured out what it is yet? I thought about not making this video as it absolutely cooks some of the heroes I main. I don't want this knowledge making my games harder. Something I've noticed that in almost every community build is this item isn't listed, which is due to the nature of how lanes and lineups work in this game. If you're a player who's blindly following guides, you might honestly never end up buying it. Alright. Enough teasing. It's Reactive Barrier. If you don't know what this item does, don't worry. It kind of feels like there's a lot of people who are also in the dark. So, Reactive Barrier is a tier 2 item, 1250 souls, and it'll automatically give you a big chunk of bullet and spirit shield whenever you're stunned, chained, slept, immobilized, or movement locked. I think Vindicta has the only movement lock. Keep in mind, these numbers might change. My conspiracy is that Ice Frog is watching my videos to invalidate my work 1 week after I upload them. But whenever Reactive Barrier triggers, you're getting 600 health worth of shields for 9 seconds, with a 30-second cooldown. I'm going to oversimplify things a bit here, but if you're getting that amount of shields with Combat Barrier and Enchanter's Barrier, you're looking along the lines of 2500 worth of souls, as well as 2 of your green slots filled. It's such a huge amount of effective health for such a cheap tier 2 item. It's truly punching well above its weight. 600 shield means you'll survive things you otherwise shouldn't, and you'll be able to turn around fights that you would have been too low to engage with. I'm going to assume this item will generally always do the same thing, but I'll talk about the passive numbers quickly. It's going to give you 20% ammo, 75 health, and 2 regen. The other thing it does now is you're also getting a stamina recharge whenever it triggers. Crazy good when you're trying to back out of a sticky situation. Going back to those spells that trigger Reactive Barrier. Stunned, chained, slept, immobilized, movement locked. You'd be surprised at just how many heroes have ways to activate Reactive Barrier. It's actually easier for me to show you guys which heroes don't naturally have a way to trigger Reactive Barrier. So this is a pretty useful graphic on when I think it's a decent Reactive Barrier game. I think the item's actually cheap enough that it can be bought early in lane to counter a specific hero, but it's also worth considering the rest of the enemy team. Sometimes there's going to be a better item to buy. So on this graphic, heroes in tier 1 mean it's a pretty solid counter. If they're in tier 2, it's situational, or if there's quite a few of them on the enemy team. And if they're in tier 3, they have a way to trigger barrier, but I wouldn't pick it up only to counter them, as they're not going to be triggering it too often. Of everyone listed here, there's a few heroes that I think Reactive Barrier is especially punishing to buy against. These are Bebop. So not only is his hook going to trigger Reactive Barrier, but weirdly enough, also his uppercut will trigger it, meaning that he's going to struggle to deal any significant damage to you with his combo. Haze? She only has 1 skill in her kit that'll trigger barrier, but my god, it feels useless playing this character against someone with Reactive Barrier. Hitting a nice dagger on the enemy only to be met with an additional 600 HP to chunk through feels impossible, especially on a hero that's kind of built around being sneaky and getting quick picks. So Mo and Krill, picking this item up early makes it brutal for when the Mo wants to ult. Usually a lot of the damage will come from Mo's teammates during a combo. So not only are you blocking the ult damage, but you're also cancelling out quite a bit more too, giving you a bit more of a chance to survive the stun. Abrams. Surviving that little bit longer after he charges means that you've got a bit more of a window to parry your average crayon eating Abrams. Not only is it going to trigger on the stun of shoulder charge, but it's also going to trigger on the stun from seismic impact as well. So, bit of a quick mention on when it's probably not a good game to buy Reactive Barrier. All of these heroes in the does nothing category don't have a natural way to trigger Reactive Barrier. That's not to say it's never going to trigger. Perhaps they'll buy something like Knockdown or Curse, which are both going to activate the barrier, but there's probably a better use of your souls. I'm also going to throw up this image too, so you can see exactly what triggers Reactive Barrier. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about this one, but feel free to pause it and leave it on screen as a reference for your games. So we talked about Reactive Barrier, but let me know in the comments what item you think is the real sleeper, the real hidden gem of Deadlock that you're buying every game. Maybe I'll make a video on it next, or maybe I won't. If you enjoyed the video, would love it if you left a like and a sub. Come say hi to me on Twitch too. Cheers.